Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said that his country will need more assistance from its Western allies until their conflict with Russia ends. But at the same time, the wartime leader also asked a BRICS-member country for help. Carlo de Peña reports.
Nothing is enough for Ukraine in its fight against Russia. This is what Ukrainian President Volodymyr said in an interview with Brazil's Globo News broadcaster this week. Zelenskyy was quoted saying, "As long as the war continues, nothing can be enough." Zelenskyy stressed that his country does not only need weapons, but also assistance in what he called as an information war, as well as more humanitarian assistance. Interestingly, the Ukrainian president also called on his Brazilian counterpart, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, to supply the mining equipment to Kiev. Zelenskyy said, quote, "I appeal to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva to supply Ukraine with the mining equipment to clear the farmlands the Russian forces has mined and have now been retaken by Ukrainian troops." The Brazilian President Lula could also help Kiev by organizing a meeting with Latin American leaders in which we could talk. Zelenskyy also said that he would never ask Lula to supply his country with weapons because he knows that Lula would not provide it to his country. Brazil is a member of the BRICS, an economic bloc composed of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The Ukrainian president's plea to Brazil comes just weeks before the BRICS Leaders Summit will take place in host country South Africa. In its fight against Russia, Ukraine has received a whopping $185.6 billion of Western aid by early summer 2023, as per the data from the Kiel Institute for the World Economy. It also reported that some of Ukraine's Western allies shouldered additional costs because they also need to accept refugees coming from Ukraine. And just last week, the Pentagon announced that it will provide additional security package for Ukraine worth $400 million, and this includes anti-tank missiles and air defense. But apparently for Ukraine, this is not enough, and its constant need for assistance had led to tension between Ukraine and its Western allies. It can be remembered that during the NATO summit in Vilnius, Lithuania in July, Zelenskyy criticized NATO for its indecisiveness on Ukraine's leadership bid. Zelenskyy's words earned the ire of UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, who at the time told reporters that Western allies are not like the online delivery service Amazon. Wallace also said that Western allies want to see gratitude from Ukraine for the military aid that has been provided to them. Reporting, this has been Carlo de Peña, SM9.
Two neighboring countries of Niger announced the sanctions imposed by the Economic Community of West African States against the junta in Niger, saying that intervention would mean a declaration of war. Jane Cognita has the details.
Following the coup that ousted Niger's elected President Mohamed Bazoum, the country is now in the hands of the junta, led by General Abdurrahman Tiani. And while the United Nations urged all parties to show restraint, West African leaders on Monday treated the Niger junta, ordering it to stand down or face punitive measures if it fails to reinstate Bazoum in 15 days. At the same time, the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, issued its own ultimatum on Sunday, saying that they would take all measures necessary to restore constitutional order in Niger, including the use of force if Bazoum is not reinstated within a week. To this, the military and governments of Mali and Burkina Faso warned the West and other African states against intervening in Niger. Their first ever joint communique stated, and quotes, "Any military intervention against Niger would amount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali," end of quote. The joint communique has also been repeated 3 times during a state television broadcast by the military spokesman of Burkinabe. The statement further said that in case of an intervention, Mali and Burkina Faso would withdraw from ECOWAS and adopt self-defense measures in support of the armed forces and the people of Niger. Both countries also condemned ECOWAS for sanctioning Niger, calling it illegal, illegitimate, and inhumane. Both countries also warned that a military intervention in their neighboring country could destabilize the entire region, as had the unilateral NATO intervention in Libya, which was at the root of the expansion of terrorism in the Sahel and West Africa. A Financial Times report said that France currently has 1,500 troops as well as a drone base in Niger. The United States, on the other hand, has 1,100 troops and 2 drone bases. Burkina Faso and Mali have sought to sever their ties to France and rebuild their respective countries with Russian assistance. And it seems that the junta leader of Niger is also severing its ties with Paris after the military announced that it would suspend the export of uranium and gold to France. Niger is the 7th largest producer of uranium in the world, accounting for 4% of global output. Reporting, this has been Jane Conita, Azimunan News.
Saudi Arabia will host a Ukrainian-organized peace summit to find a way of ending war between Ukraine and Russia. Melchizedek Cadiz reports.
The head of the Ukraine's presidential office, Andrei Yermak, confirmed that Saudi Arabia will host talks in early August to assess the situation in Ukraine and discuss a peace plan. The summit will be attended by national security advisors and political advisors who are expected to discuss the implementation of Ukraine's peace formula in Jeddah. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has first introduced the 10-point peace plan to the global leaders during the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia in November of last year. In December, Zelenskyy urged world leaders to support his idea for a global peace summit that would focus on peace plan. Ukraine's 10-point peace plan calls for the implementation of radiation and nuclear safety, food security, energy security, prisoners and deportees, United Nations Charter and Ukraine's territorial integrity, as well as world order, Russian troops and hostilities, justice, immediate protection for the environment, and prevention of escalation, and confirmation of the end of the war. The Ukrainian Peace Summit will be divided in 3 phases, with the first phase one held in Denmark on June 27th, the second phase to take place in Saudi Arabia in early August, and the last phase to possibly take place by the end of the year. Western allies have promised to support Ukraine with more weapons during the 2-day NATO summit in Vilnius, Lithuania, earlier this month. However, Ukraine's NATO membership remains unclear as member states are divided whether to invite Ukraine to the alliance. Reporting, this has been Melchizedek Cadiz, SMNI News, Kuwait.